Welcome back to our mini-series about generative AI and education. In this video, we'll be going over how to use generative AI as an educator to offload work and inspire our students. If you haven't already done so, I encourage you to watch our introduction to generative AI video, which will be linked in the video description. There's no doubt that generative AI, specifically the rise of ChatGPT, has disrupted our educational system. Students can now get instant answers to all of their questions, and educators are left wondering if the students have truly grasped the concepts that they are being taught. This leads us to a very critical question. What is the role of generative AI in education? Should it be allowed or banned? I like this quote by Dr. McCullen, who states, "Every advance in learning technology, paper, slate, chalk, every piece of tech has been called the death of learning." And we see this portrayed in the reactions of the educational systems when ChatGPT was released. However, it is important to reflect on a quote from Dr. Revens, who states, "In any epoch of rapid change, those organizations unable to adapt are soon in trouble, and adaptation is only achieved by learning." Generative AI is just another example of the disruption in the educational system. The cat is out of the bag for generative AI. It has been released and will only become better. We as educators need to adapt to the world with generative AI to best educate our students. To understand generative AI's role in education, we can look at Bloom's cognitive taxonomy. The taxonomy allows us to rank our students' knowledge of a subject from remember, the ability to simply remember the concept, to create, where advanced research is conducted. A good example of technology in Bloom's cognitive domain is a calculator. I would argue that a basic calculator is capable of remember through apply. The calculator definitely cannot defend its answers or create a new mathematical law, and therefore it's unable to achieve the higher levels of Bloom's cognitive taxonomy. Where do you think generative AI fits in Bloom's taxonomy? This question was asked to a group of professors at the University of New Brunswick, which yielded the following results. Analyzing the results, we can see that generative AI does not have a definitive stopping point on Bloom's cognitive taxonomy. Clearly, generative AI can remember and apply, as these domains are the basis of text-based generative AI systems like ChatGPT. However, generative AI can create, although it may be untrue or out of context, leading to low scores that we see in the understand and evaluate portion of the results. Where do you think generative AI fits in Bloom's cognitive domain? If you're interested in participating, please scan this QR code and fill out the form. Before we dive into some applications of generative AI from an educator's perspective, it is important to cover the best way to interact with text-based generative AI. The three guidelines are to clearly state your objective, provide as much relevant context as possible about yourself and the objective, and put restrictions on the output, as this will help you quickly converge to your desired answer. We can now use our knowledge of prompting guidelines and how generative AI works to reduce our workload as educators. Here's a simple example of a prompt for a professor teaching a creative arts class. They want to develop a simple assignment to expose the level of creative writing talent in their class. This prompt is set up on the three prompting guidelines we outlined earlier. Highlighted in green is the main objective of the prompt, which is to create an assignment. In purple, context is provided, allowing the assignment to be tailored to first-year university students. If this information was not provided, the assignment could target primary, high school, or university-level students. Finally, the last portion of our prompt limits the assignment and ensures that the corresponding rubric is developed. Entering this prompt into ChatGPT, I received the following response. Looking at the output, we can see that it provides a very good description and outline of an assignment within the bounds of our objectives, providing a verbose and detailed description of the assignment that would struggle to fit on one page. An important thing to notice is that ChatGPT added details to this submission that we did not tell it to include, such as margin, font, spacing, and submission details. These details may help or hinder the development of your assignment, increasing or decreasing the amount of editing time required. ChatGPT even fulfilled the requirement of a marking rubric. However, the rubric contains all qualitative assessment, which are subjective and could change based on the person marking the assignment. Overall, the response from ChatGPT achieves our initial objective, and we can use this assignment in our class setting with minor revisions. We could also allow ChatGPT to make changes based on our command, such as providing a follow-up prompt to include qualitative assessments within the rubric. Let's now look at using ChatGPT to generate technical questions. Here we have a simple prompt asking for a test question to see if students understand the principles of force and moment balances in a second-year statics course. Here, we can see that the prompt only provided an objective and context, leaving it up to ChatGPT to determine the restrictions imposed on the objective. The result of this prompt is the simple equilibrium of a trust problem, where ChatGPT provides a problem and even attempts to provide an image, which shows up as the image's alternative text. To mark this question, we would need to know the mathematical solution accompanied by a marking rubric. In a follow-up prompt, I asked ChatGPT to provide me with the solution to the problem and a grading scheme. ChatGPT failed to provide the mathematical solution to the problem, but it did outline the steps required to solve the problem and provided a somewhat usable rubric with no numerically dependent marks. This example has two main takeaways. Generative AI is not predictable when it isn't constrained, and generative AI fails to generate numerical questions and answer for complex topics. So far, we have seen how we can use generative AI to help instructors with their workload, providing a good starting point for the creation of assignment and test questions. However, we must remember the foundation of generative AI when we use it. There are many issues with using generative AI in an educational environment. The first and most important is unintentional plagiarism. Generative AI is trained off the internet. That means everything it provides you is a synthesis or direct copy of other people's work, without providing any references to where the information was taken from. Second, generative AI will confidently give you the wrong answers, as its response is based on word probabilities instead of the underlying facts of the objective or topic. It is important to know that ChatGPT uses reinforcement learning to provide you with its answer. This makes generative AI a people-pleasing tool, which will tell you what you want to hear as opposed to what is actually factual. A point of concern for educators is the use of generative AI by their students. Here I have provided a few examples of generative AI detection tools available on the internet. However, while generative AI may be detectable in its raw form, a minor revision by a student could easily fool these detectors. While many educators want to limit the use of generative AI, I encourage educators to allow their students to use generative AI to do pre-search. If students don't know where to start, ask them to create a prompt in ChatGPT with an objective, context, and limitation. Here are two examples that do just that. The first example is from a student trying to identify the required skill to become a rocket scientist, where the second asks the age-old question of, why do I need to learn this? Generative AI is a tool that allows students and educators to garnish enough information through pre-search to start answering the what, why, and how questions that we have daily. Finally, we can look at what our role is as an educator in the world where generative AI exists. Our goal should be to promote critical thinking within our students. This allows students to first contextualize the problem, reflect on their prior knowledge of the subject, analyze and evaluate responses, be it from generative AI or some other source, use their analysis to connect prior knowledge structures, and finally, use their analysis to create new knowledge structures. By encouraging our students to think critically, they will generate good questions full of objective and context. The good questions can now be met with good answers using generative AI to pre-search or answer the question, followed by traditional search methods like Google to back up generative AI. With good questions and good answers, students can accelerate their learning in a wide domain of topics. To conclude this video, I would like to leave you with the following reflection. How can we, as educators, inspire critical thinking in our students so that they can generate good questions and accelerate their learning?